David Steele is a man with varied interests. He is the CEO of One Wealth Advisors. He is the co-founder and executive chairman of Flower and Water Hospitality Group. He is a patron of the arts, a committed member of his community. Welcome to the show, David.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, excited to have you on. Tell us about your personal lives, more about your work, and why you do what you do.
Well, yeah, I mean, I grew up relatively modest background, single mom, school teacher, raising two kids, worked my childhood as soon as I could work, all the way through college in restaurants, loved restaurants, didn't think I could make a living opening restaurants, went into finance, became a financial planner in 1991, started building my financial planning practice, as I like to say, one client at a time, kind of the right way, I think, very patient, low and slow. Did nothing but that for 15 years. Had my brother join me. We kept building it together, and eventually I went to my brother and said, I want to open a restaurant. I have to scratch this itch. He let me and opened a restaurant, became radically successful, and that has now turned into a restaurant company that I am co-founder and executive chairman of. I don't have a minute by minute day job with that company because I do financial planning still. But I help my co-founder and CEO run the restaurant company that now has 8 restaurants and a consumer packaged goods business. Meanwhile, my financial planning company, we manage 380 clients' wealth, and we manage about $1.1 billion in assets. And why do I do what I do? I love helping people. Everything I do is in the service of others, full stop. And I think it's the only thing that really ultimately is going to make us happy.
Well said. So we were talking before we hit record that we oftentimes look outside of ourselves for answers, for solutions. We think that when I get this thing or get to this place, things are going to be different, but that's not always how it works out.
Yeah, I mean, you and I were talking about a client situation that I have where one of the clients was, by my estimation, pretty unsettled with her life in general. And there was always this feeling like when she got the next job, or when he got the next job and was making more money, or when they bought the next house, or whatever it was, at that point in time, she was going to allow herself to be happy. And of course, you can imagine as I tell the story, unsurprisingly, she finds herself looking for the next variable that's going to make her feel settled rather than enjoying the process. For me, for example, I recently built a house up in Tahoe. I put my life savings into the house. I spent 4 years designing and building it. It was a real struggle, and I didn't take my own advice because I assumed when that house was going to be done, I would be happy in the home. Lo and behold, I'm the same damn person. And so do as I say, not as I do. But what I say is, my goodness, enjoy the journey.
Is that just a human thing that and what is the mistake? We're not enjoying the journey, but is there another layer there? Am I, it's not that I'm deficient, I'm looking outside for answers.
Well, I mean, there's an interesting framing, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Which is the base needs. When those are met, that is, we know we're going to be, as I often say, warm, dry, and fed. And we have confidence in that. We can then turn our attention to other levels of this pyramid, if you will. The top level being self-actualization in Maslow's framing. Um, I acknowledge that it's really hard to be, happy, satisfied when you don't have security. You don't feel safe, or, like I said, warm, dry, or fed. Once you have those things, um, my belief is that that's it. Like then your job is to do the mental gymnastics necessary, I think, to realize that whatever it is that's bothering you, it's probably short fundamentally of worrying about whether you're going to be able to feed yourself. Therefore, you have to put it in the right context and say, well, this is just life. And we often set ourselves up, and I'll bring this back to financial planning. when the big classic one is buy a home that really, really stretches us uncomfortably, whether it be the carrying cost of a mortgage or too much of our net worth was put into this one thing. And so there's a lot more at stake with it. Um, we set ourselves up for a lot of years of what is it, the python swallowing the pig? That saying, best case scenario, you do something big, you're over your skis a little bit, but the python swallows the pig eventually, and all of a sudden life is back to sort of normal. And but inevitably humans, when we have the ability, sort of like dogs that have a bone, are given another bone and they're going to protect both bones and try to chew both bones, and they're just going to keep taking more bones you give it, the more bones it's going to try to protect. Humans just we keep doing these things, and I draw the analogy with one of the kids, one of the guys on my team that I mentor, and I say, your ditch is full of shit. You have to shovel the shit and have confidence that you'll eventually get the shit out of the ditch. Get married, you just filled it with more shit. And I apologize about how negative this sounds. I'm not implying one shouldn't get married. I'm just saying you complicated your life. You got to get used to it. You'll eventually get used to it. And hopefully it gets very sort of normalized. Well, have a kid. You just filled your ditch with shit. Keep shoveling. Buy a house filled with shit. Start a business filled with shit. For me, when I was younger, it's like, what else are you going to do? Fill your ditch with shit and just keep digging. But at some point in time, ideally, I think we have consciousness around these life decisions. And if we can't enjoy shoveling the shit, so to speak, and then my analogy probably should shift to something so not so negatively connoted. But if you don't enjoy the shoveling, then be careful about your willingness to take on a project or a change in the variable in your life that requires you to shovel.
It's a lot of powerful stuff right there. And I love it. How does this young person that you're mentoring respond to it? Do they just go get the shovel, or do they sort
He,
of put
he
their head
really
down
he
and
really
kick?
likes it. He likes it. That's it. I've used that with other people that I mentor, and he really likes it because maybe he'll listen to this podcast and smile because I think I used it first with him, and I've used it many times since. And I really do think it has made him slow down a little bit and be more deliberate with the decisions he makes around big life decisions.
There's a lot there to unpack, and it really resonates with me. And I certainly think that you're correct. I love Maslow, familiar with the hierarchy of needs. Self-actualization is something I'm certainly striving for. I discovered a couple of years ago that another thing Maslow talked about was that he believed that mediocrity was a pathology, and that he believed what animates human beings at our highest level is realizing our fullest potential. And I was like, oh my goodness, that really resonates with me. And so this idea of shoveling shit, it also makes me think of Sisyphus, he's cursed to push the boulder up the hill every day, only to have it roll back down. And Camus, who wrote that, or he wrote about it, said that we have to imagine Sisyphus as happy as he's going through this.
Let me tell you something. I have used this analogy or that fable many, many times, but I have owned it and made it my own. And here it is. I tell and this is usually when I coach entrepreneurs. I say, when you're starting a business, you are Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the hill. In the fable, the boulder rolls down every day and he goes back to sleep, wakes up, and does it over and over again. And sure, you can imagine him being happy. Okay, fine. But it's kind of Groundhog Day nihilism, that fable, right? I think that's certainly the intention of, the genesis of that story. So I want to rewrite it and say that Sisyphus pushes the boulder up. It doesn't always go back to the bottom. And in fact, slowly but surely it makes progress. Eventually gets to the top of the hill, and he's there, and he leans on it to wipe his brow of sweat, and the boulder rolls down the other side. He looks down the other side, and what he sees is a field of snow. The boulder catches snow and becomes a giant snowball and gets bigger and bigger. Snowball effect. And I think when you're an entrepreneur starting a business, it's going to feel like the boulder rolls down. It's not always rolling down. Eventually, the business is going to get to a critical mass, hopefully, if you do it the right way, and it'll be a snowball effect. It will keep growing without you having to push so hard. Maybe life's like that too.
I think that that's a wonderful way to build on that story, and um, perfectly germane to what we're talking about, and to the advice and knowledge and mentorship that you provide to entrepreneurs who are getting started. I think that I love everything about that. What do you think about that idea that Maslow thinks we're wired to continually progress? Because what you're pointing to, it's sort of like we're we're intentionally adding more shit to our trench to dig out, and we've got our needs met, and so I'm at this new level. I have these new skills, but so then I create more conflict or problems, or I'm looking for them where I need not be. I could just be content and happy with where I was.
I I'm glad you brought it back to that because I really liked when you were talking about that aspect of Maslow's philosophy or ideas, and then we went off on this fable reconstruction. Um, I have a core belief humans just want to be loved and valued. After our base needs are met, that's all we seek. So everything we do is around at base, our motivation can, I believe, point back to an innate desire to be loved and valued. And us are desiring to continue to be productive, to create, to produce, whatever it may be. I believe, again, at base is just trying to be valued. I don't want to get too political here. If we look at the current president, regardless of whether you're a fan or not, if you look at him and his actions and his behaviors through the lens of he just wants to be loved and valued, I actually think it makes a lot of sense. Everything he does, I'm not particularly, so I'm not a supporter of him particularly, but I'm not trying to get political. I'm just saying we can look at any leader through that lens and imagine if they just want to be loved and valued. Oh, wow, that begins to explain their behaviors. So if why you're doing what you're doing, again, getting back to the Maslow, your point around Maslow, is to follow our higher purpose or whatever our most productive self is, I think it's because we just want to feel like we're worth something.
I think that that's right. We want to feel loved and valued. We want to feel useful. I guess that that's part of being valued. And so when I'm making moves, I'm uprooting my life and moving to a new place because I perceive that that will change me, it'll change my outlook, whatever. And I realize it doesn't. What is what is the fix? Is it recognizing, okay, I know that I realize I need to be loved and valued, and I need more of this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm spending 30 minutes today to talk with you. It's 30 minutes out of my day. I'm busy. It takes me time. Why am I doing this? Well, I'm doing this on the surface because I want to give back to the world. If anybody's listening and finds wisdom in anything I'm saying and their lives are maybe a little bit better or whatever, guess what? I'm feeling valued. That is my motivation for this. I try to have a consciousness around that. So before I booked this with you, I said, is this, because this is going to take 30 minutes of my day, is that investment worth what I'm going to feel when I get out of it? And of course, I decided yes. So I think having a consciousness around this framing, if anybody's buying what I'm selling, before they decide to do something, even if it's for 30 minutes of their day, or God forbid, having a child, which is a minimum of 18 years of your life and possibly a heck of a lot more, depending upon your involvement in their life. Um, just make sure you're signing a contract with yourself where you're saying, you know what, this is going to make me feel loved and valued, and it's going to be worth the work.
So being
A lot
conscious,
of things, a lot of things aren't, right? I mean, being judicious with your being treating your time really valuably and looking at it through that lens. I mean, you'll I think a lot of things we choose to do with our time, whether they be big things or small things, we may say, huh, why am I doing this? What is motivating me to do this?
we have at our fingertips and our disposal a universe of next things that we could do. I could do anything. I could watch TV. You could go for a hike. You could work on one of your restaurants. You could go to your house. You could do a million different things. And being conscious, conscientious, being intentional about, okay, if I choose to do this, am I going to get the result that I'm looking for, something close to that? I think that that's as practical as it gets and profound and extremely helpful advice.
Yeah. You know, tell you a quick story if we have time. My restaurant company, we're in negotiations on a new location, and it's in a sub area for our primary business, which is mostly around the Bay Area. This is in the Truckee Tahoe area where we have two restaurants, and we're thinking about opening another one of our concepts that's in Truckee and Reno. Anyhow, blah, blah, blah. We're negotiating for this lease, and we're very close to signing, and it's going to be a third location in that region. And my partner said right after we had our last meeting, so and so developer just called and there's this other location that's going to be open. And so it was a bit of a loaded question. I said, well, don't you think we're going to sign the lease for this location? Yeah. I said, well, why are you considering the other location? Because we think it's maybe not, certainly not better. If anything, it's even. He goes, well, maybe, I'd like to do another concept. There's that ditch filling with shit. Is he ready to shovel? Now, he's younger than I am. This company's more about him than it is about me because I've achieved most of my financial goals. He has yet to do so. So really, we're building this for him. But how quickly, how much shit do you want to fill in that ditch, and how many people do you have to have shovel with you, and is it worth it? And it would be better to fill it with a little bit of shit, dig it out, and then let's move on after that. And so it's this human nature, like when all of a sudden you have all these choices, and as you become more successful, you have more and more choice because your success has gravitas, magnetism, and saying no is really hard when there's lots of awesome stuff to say yes to.
What is this person's name? Just his first name.
Brandon,
Brandon.
Brandon, Brandon.
Brandon, do you want the shit to be above your knees, above your waist, or do you want it to be eye level, Brandon?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I'll definitely make him listen to this one.
Yeah, like Brandon, have you thought this all the way through?
Yeah.
Sometimes that's a question when I say sometimes, I mean I want to ask people that all the time because I just don't think that we've thought everything all the way through, and maybe it's just because we're not thinking it in total, but that's the reason that we have conversations like this and then publish them on the internet. Not because I have the answers, because you've given me so much to think about, and I think about this stuff all the time.
Yeah, I mean, again, and anybody listening thinks that David Steele, that I figured it out. Man, it's a work in progress. But I laugh at myself a lot and go, up there it is. I didn't even know it. Filled the ditch with shit. All right, start digging.
I think that is wonderful, and it's not. This is mildly germane. Just when we're talking about digging, this gentleman, he's a gold miner, and now he does gold developments. He said the only time you start at the top is when you're digging a hole. So I don't know if that makes sense to our conversation, but it's certainly aligned with the whole digging thing. So
Well, build an organization and have people dig for you.
there you go. There you go. There's a pile of shovels right over there. Just go ahead and grab one. I love it. Well, David, thank you so much for coming on. And if y'all did not realize, David was on the Aligned Money Show at some point within the last 18 months, so you could check out that episode as well. But where can people learn more? How can people engage with you?
I
Check
have a
out your
website.
restaurants, check out
Yeah.
for your financial planning practice, all of it.
Yeah, and I'm on some boards of some interesting companies, and I built a little website that has links to all of the stuff I'm involved with. It's www.davidsteele.xyz, DAVIDSTEELE.xyz.
Excellent. Well, if you enjoyed as much as I did, show David your appreciation. Share today's show with a friend who also appreciates good ideas. Pass this along to the person who's constantly filling their ditch up with more shit. Maybe it's a good idea. Maybe just give it a second thought. Who knows? Go to davidsteele.xyz, davidsteele.xyz, and learn more about what David is working on and all the good stuff. Thanks again, David.
Thanks for having me. I'll come back anytime.
Love it. Till next time, remember, do your part by doing your best.